My name is Marleen Dieleman. I'm a professor of family business at IMD Business School, and I'm here today in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, with one of the oldest and most respected family businesses in the region, Royal Selangor. And with me are Yong Yoon Li and Chen Tien Yue, who are collectively leading the company. We are going to talk about the history, innovation in Royal Selangor, the governance structure, and the legacy of the business. Welcome to this interview. To start us off, could you tell me briefly about the long history of your business?
Well, thank you for coming. My name is Yoon Li, as you know. My great-grandfather, who started the business, came from southern China in 1885 to Kuala Lumpur, not to be a tin miner, but a tinsmith. And from then on, from a little shop house, he then expanded his business to a bigger shop house before we moved not very far away from here into a factory where my grandfather and my father's generation started to grow the business.
And how do you come into the picture? What generation are you now?
So we're fourth generation, and we came into the business after working in some other roles. For me, I came from a consulting company, joined Royal Selangor in an operational role leading a sales team, and then at some point joined the board about 10 years ago. And now I work with our sales teams across different markets, helping them grow the Royal Selangor brand in their respective countries.
Okay, wonderful. So in family business, we sometimes worry that with the longer history, people forget to innovate, and maybe some of the companies become stale or even disappear. You have lasted very long, and you've done that through innovation. Can you tell us more and give us examples about how that happened? How did you overcome those barriers to innovation?
I guess innovation appears in various forms, especially when our business over the last 100 over years have encompassed many different skills and functions. So we take anything from design to manufacturing, to marketing, retail, and everything that sticks it all together. So innovation originally was out of pure necessity. When my great-grandfather and my grandfather were creating products, they had to cater for the different demographics in society, starting obviously with his compatriots coming from China. A lot of the products were very Chinese-based, whether they were templeware or things to use at home, to when the country was growing and gaining its independence, we moved on to more Western wear, whether it was tankards or drinkware or even toast racks. These were products of relevance at that point in time, and we innovated that way. There were, of course, other processes of innovation throughout the whole entire history, from a very job shop, craftsmanship style way of manufacturing to now, when you go through our visitor center, you will see a pretty modern but still a very labor-intensive, very disciplined way of manufacturing our products.
And we also innovate in the way we now engage with our customers. Customers prefer to communicate or interact with us in different ways. Some of them want to come to the visitor center, to our retail stores, to speak to us. So we've got interesting experiences for them, such as our workshops here. So we see them in person. But a lot of them are happy to engage with us through our e-commerce channels, via WhatsApp. So we need to make sure that the lifestyles that have evolved today, we are evolving along and suiting to how they want to interact.
Oh, that's interesting. So is that an innovation that your generation brought to the business that maybe your parents' generation didn't think of?
Interestingly, I think we've got one of the oldest e-commerce websites, which even started in the previous generation in the 90s. We're probably one of the first companies in Malaysia to start running e-commerce sales and delivering to all over the world, right? So more than 25 years later, we continue to do that. But e-commerce today is so much more different in the way we reach customers all over the world, content that we put on social media. So I think every generation has been quite innovative in how they felt they needed to adapt to the situation, and we're continuing that process.
So you make it sound very easy, but I'm sure it is not that easy to be so innovative all the time. So is there something that in the culture or in the organization that makes you more likely to innovate perhaps than some of your competitors or compatriots?
I think we have the luxury of learning from mistakes. I mean, you know, my great-grandfather, my grandfather, my parents, our generation, and the whole, I think the whole progress through from a very small business to now we reach almost a global audience. We learn, we fail quite a few times, that goes without saying, but we learn very quickly from what we do. We are really, at the end of the day, because we own the brand, we are really our masters of our destiny. So we can always, we don't report to any head office around the world. So we can always adapt very quickly or relatively quickly to changing marketplaces or changing taste within different markets. I wouldn't say we are particularly innovative. We still are very tied to our roots and to our craft. We still continue to push the use of pewter in this very magnificent material and push the boundaries of its use in our designs and the way that we manufacture. So some people may say that we're not very innovative, but we have got other avenues of trying out new ideas. So, for example, like what we do online, how we talk to our customers on social media or digital, to how we control our processes within the organization, whether it's through ERP or talking to our customers through a loyalty type program. Those are other interesting ways of being innovative.
Great. So my lesson learned is that it's a really important thing to navigate that space between tradition and innovation and to keep connected to both sides, right? Let me ask you something on the governance of family businesses. So as families go into next generations, more people get involved, we always worry a little bit about the potential of conflicts in family businesses. And that's when you typically start to think about creating better governance for the family business. Now, you are one of the older family businesses in the region. You've gone through that whole process. Can you tell me, when did you first become aware of the need for better governance in the family business, and how did that work?
I think it's interesting because we've gone through the pain of seeing in the second generation rival pewter companies set up by siblings in the business. So we're very conscious of the potential issues in family businesses. And about 20 years ago, the family sat down to put together a family charter. That was quite a long process because there was a lot of discussion about what we wanted to share as guidelines for how family members should behave in how they interact with the business. So that was formalizing our thoughts, putting it down in paper so that each family member could read and understand what was expected of them, so that everyone was very clear. So for example, do we expect family members to join the family business straight out of school? It's very clear, no, we would like you to go and get experience outside before you come and bring your experience and your skills to the company. So we've been through that one long process 20 years ago, but we continue to evolve and think about how we want to get the family members into the company. Yeah,
so normally families create kind of like a rule book, which is called a charter or a constitution, which spells out the expectations of the behaviors of family members, right? So can you maybe also tell me what is the benefit for your family of doing that? We already saw some of the examples of the rules.
I guess the most important thing is really to minimize misunderstanding. I think a lot of times we've seen that family businesses, or even families for that matter, get into conflict because of a misunderstanding. And for us, something like a charter or a constitution really does put things in black and white. As simple as that. The second generation that Tien Yue alluded to, was a pretty painful time for my grandfather, because he was part of that, and he had to go through that whole process where his brothers were creating competition within a very, very small marketplace. You know, this is pre-war, you're talking about pre-Second World War, and just after the Second World War even. So, I mean, that whole movement was quite painful for him. And from then on, he made it a point, and he always told my father's generation that we can never fight, you know. And because of that, as the family grows bigger and bigger, it's very difficult to instill that those values, until it's written. And that is what we made that very definitive commitment and a decision to write things down.
Was it an easy process to create all these rules?
It's very funny because it got so nitty-gritty. We would spend like, I don't know, 15 minutes on a particular topic, and then people had different views. The best example is, you know, can you use company assets, right? Because it's so easy. It's so easy to slide into that, say, well, I need to borrow a car, or we've had requests to borrow company projectors, and we have to say no. You know, we draw the line where company assets are company assets, and family members who are not involved in the business should not be utilizing the company assets. So it seems simple, it seems very logical, but in practice, you can really think of a lot of situations where you say, should we bend those rules a little bit? So it was funny how long we spent on very minute detail like that just to thrash it out and try to get alignment on it.
But although the rules take a long time to discuss, then comes the process of implementing them. Was that hard?
Implementing. I think I wouldn't say it's difficult. I think 80% or 85% of the rules were relatively easy to comply. For example, you know, fun things like every 18 months we have to get together as a family, and these family retreats have been going on since I don't know, must be 1998, 99. And it's fun, but the charter says, you know, that you have to do it within 18 months. Of course, COVID was a bit of a challenge, but you know, we've been doing it diligently, and we enjoyed coming together as a family. 3 generations, 4 generations sometimes, but you know, it's certainly 3 generations coming together, and to see the 5th generation grow up in a very I don't know, I wouldn't say contrived, but very structured environment like that. Then the next step would be, you know, how do we vote for family council? And family council has to be voted in through at a family retreat. And that whole voting process is also as democratic as possible. That was a little bit more difficult to implement, but you know, people have finally understood. I think the most difficult ones I would find, and you know, to be really honest, is number one, is that we as a generation are not allowed to join the family business upon graduating or upon leaving school, and that we will have to find vocation elsewhere, and that is a very counterintuitive, but very beneficial after you've gone through the whole process. Very beneficial. And the last one is that, you know, at 70 you have to retire. How do you make somebody retire consciously? Because, you know, we've more or less both of us have spent 20 years in this business already. So how do you make somebody retire after 50 years in the business? You know, it's very difficult. Yeah, of course you can also think of other roles that people who retire might have to take. But I'm happy that you talked about the idea that the rules are not sufficient. You also need to invest in the social aspect of it and the bonding. Can you tell me some experiences? What does the getting together as a family mean for how, for instance, the children grow up in the next generation? Do they get a different exposure than in other families?
I think one is it's good that keeps the family closer together. Everyone keeps each other updated. You know, when we get together, we give everyone updates on what we've been doing, you know, how things are going in school, or new hobbies. So that's nice. It's a very social interaction. At the same time, we can give little updates on how the company is progressing, what new things we've been doing. So everyone feels that they know what's going on and they have some say and they're able to contribute some ideas. So I think that's good.
Does that help you in taking the important business decisions like innovating, going to a new market, that the family is well connected and aligned?
I think a lot of the decisions when it comes to innovation or projects, it's very much the management team that we have here, people who are really day to day in our marketing teams, our design teams. I think they're driving a lot of that because they really understand the business and the product. The family members who are not, I think, can just give us good external perspectives of things from hopefully an objective point of view.
Yeah.
We may be stuck in the details. So it's good when we are thinking of more major decisions that they share their thoughts on whether they think this is the right direction, whether we have the bandwidth or we're spreading ourselves too thin. So yeah, I think it's a good combination of having the expertise of our team members here in the company and those views of the family members who can take a broader view.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. Many families in Asia are thinking of their legacy now, and they're only now starting to formulate what is the legacy, where did they come from. You have had a very long legacy. First of all, can you tell me what are the advantages of being such a heritage brand? Does it help you?
I think it definitely helps because we're in a consumer business, and people love brands if they like the stories behind the brands. So people like brands that have authentic stories of craftsmanship. They like stories of family businesses because it puts a human story of face together at the brand. So I think it's great for consumer businesses. I'm not sure if it works as importantly for perhaps some B2B cases. So it's great.
Can you give me an example of a story?
Well, this building.
Yeah.
This building is a wonderful story. I mean, and we use the visitor center, this building that we are in today, not only to tell about the history of Royal Selangor or Selangor pewter at that time, but also a little bit about tin, a little bit about pewter in the material, and a lot about the history of Kuala Lumpur and how it was from a small mining village to a megacity or a megalopolis that you see today. And this is real. I mean, it's about Royal Selangor growing up in this city, being part of this city from the tinsmithing days of my great-grandfather to the now a pewter making facility here in Setapak Jaya, just outside the city. It's a real story. It's not fake. We've been part of it. The family's been part of it for 4 generations, and now coming into the 5th generation.
So I heard that you can be toured here by the next generation if you're lucky. Tell us about it.
Yeah, the kids range from 5 years old to their late 20s in the 5th generation. But during school holidays, we've encouraged some of them to come here and learn the story that our guiding team takes the tour groups around, or visitors or locals who come on a weekend. So the kids have started learning the script. They've taken their friends around. Some of them have actually worked here for like a month, where they were part of the guiding team, and it's great. So they learn the stories. To them, it's probably more real because they know a lot of the background behind it. And that's a nice way to get them involved in.
Excellent, great example for others. So I love the fact that your history is helping you to get a competitive advantage in the market and also bond the family together. But I also meet other families, sometimes the next generation feels entrapped in the legacy of the past, and they feel it to be rather limiting, maybe, rather than empowering. So can you tell me whether your legacy also gives you certain limits, and how did you overcome those limits?
I think from my perspective, the limitation is a very small one. I mean, the common thread is that we're working with the same material that the founder was working with 139 years ago. Yeah. That's a very small parameter, but within that, we are developing all sorts of new products that you see in the store today that were not here, not just 10 years ago, but even 5 years ago. Yeah. So I think that small constraint is a very small, I wouldn't even say it's a price, because it's part of the story and part of the legacy. Where there may be companies where the product doesn't change, and they're just making the product, selling the same product year in, year out. And I think that's hardly the case here, because the nature of the business is that we're constantly developing new products that fits with our customers' lifestyles today, right? So I think it's a very small constraint, but a huge, huge advantage. And why I believe there's no other company that could start a Royal Selangor today is that it's so much about the craftsmen. So if you tried to train up a team of craftsmen today with the level of skill and expertise that our team has, I think it would be impossible. And so the fact that we have that, and they're tied to the story, they love the family history, how I think we felt like an extended family together. It's so difficult to build from scratch today. So tiny little constraints, but huge advantages.
So it is more like the legacy is a platform that then opens up new opportunities.
And it's interesting, we work with a lot of other brands, partners, and they like the fact that they're working with a company which has this legacy of craftsmanship, going back almost 140 years, but at the same time, working with them in a completely new product category. So whether it's like a Star Wars chess set with all that legacy of craftsmanship behind it, or some drinkware accessories with some other brands, I think it's a great example where collaboration partners want to work with someone with an authentic story, because we bring something to the table, but we're also very willing to adapt to the product categories that they're interested in.
And does the fact that your history stretches back so far connect to your product? How do you think about that? Is it does it help that you have such a solid presence?
I think if you take the product, it aligns very closely with the history, because if you pick up a piece of Royal Selangor, the weight in your hand, how solid it feels, you think that this is going to be a product that will be around for the next generation or next 2 generations or 3. And so what they're holding feels like it's something permanent. It's capturing perhaps a particular occasion, because they may have received it as a wedding gift, and that's what reminds them of that special moment in their lives. And that permanent thing, that sense of longevity, you'll have it for the next generation, fits very well with a brand that is itself 139 years old. So we're not starting today as a new company saying, would you like to purchase this item? And you might have it for a couple of generations, because would people believe that? Would that be credible? But they can see, they can come to our museum, they can see some of the pieces that have been here for generations. And I think they can expect that what they have in their hands today would also be something that's passed on for generations.
I love this aspect of permanence. Thank you for sharing that. Why is it actually Royal Selangor?
Why is it royal?
It's another story.
There's a very interesting story that happened in my father's generation, so that would be the 3rd generation, back in 1970, where the Sultan of Selangor was visiting Australia and walked into a department store. And the sales team there said to him, "So where are you from?" He says, "I'm from Selangor." And she said, "Oh, the people who make the pewter." So obviously he was quite proud of my grandfather's company at that point in time, to be more or less be their advertisers, right? The royal family's advertisers. So when he came back, he said, "I think we should give these people some royal warrant," and which is what he did. And so he wrote out a royal warrant to say, we're the official royal pewterers of Selangor. And we only used it in our brand in 1992, when we decided to embrace not only just the warrant, but also the state that we are very proud of in our brand. And we finally dropped the pewter in 2000, I think it was. So it used to be Selangor Pewter Company, then Royal Selangor Pewter, and now it's just Royal Selangor. And because of that, I think it, although it gives us a little bit more freedom in terms of material use. So as you walk around, we've got Selbaran that does all fine jewelry, platinum, 18 karat gold. And we've got Comins, which is a company which we acquired in the early 90s as well, a sterling silver company, 300 over years old, very old company. So we thought that, with Royal Selangor as the parent company, we could encompass not only just pewter, but other precious metals as well.
So your name changes also reflect the innovations that happened in your legacy over time. That is wonderful. Many families, especially those here in Asia, are not as don't have as long a history as you have, and some of them are only grappling with the issues that you have already grappled with for generations. What is your number one tip that you would like to give to other families that are going through innovations, governance, formulating their legacies?
I think we've been very disciplined in how we operated from one generation to another, being very careful. I remember my grandfather tell me every once in a while, he'd say, "Oh, this is too risky. Let's keep to the straight and narrow, and let's do what we do best." I think that was his mantra. But that in a way he feels that even though, it's quite ironic because he was the innovator in terms of manufacturing processes, right? So he loved to dabble with machinery, but he always stuck. He would dabble and then come back, and his dedication and following to the craft, I think, was very, very strong. So that's what we did. We've always been. If you go down the line now, there will be some craftspeople who have been trained by him, not only just as engravers but as smiths, and they would just remember him as uncle, right? But that whole process, or rather that whole ideology of preserving the craft, I think, or keeping to the straight and narrow, was probably one of our strengths. Yeah. I mean, not very scalable, unfortunately, but
special.
Longevity,
yes.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, the second thing would be probably, just telling an authentic story, and which is what we've been doing for the past 20 years, the both of us, especially, and telling the team, that the authentic story is the only story that we know, and it doesn't lie, unfortunately.
Yeah, telling stories together is a really powerful way of continuing the family legacy. What advice would you have for other families based on what you have gone through as a family?
I think as painful as it is, I think the family charter is a worthwhile exercise to do. The family retreats are a definite must to keep the family close together. I think these two are critical things that any family business should adopt. I say it's painful because it took such a long time, but you just have to do it. You just have to get down to getting aligned in the family, what we believe should be the involvement of family members in a family business or not, if the case may be. So I think every family should go through that process.
Okay. When you take decisions as a family with multiple people, it's different from taking decisions alone, right? Are there certain behaviors as a leader in a family business that you had to learn to be effective?
We are, as a family, given several opportunities to pose a question or to seek decision from the greater family. So the easiest one would be, on a WhatsApp group, obviously, So what do you think we should go? Where do you think we should go for our next family retreat, for example? Right? That's a pretty straightforward and fun decision or a motion to put forward. The more tricky ones or the more weighty ones would come in the family retreat. And so in a family retreat, there isn't really much lobbying. We just normally just pose the motion in front of everyone, and we'll take maybe a couple of minutes to ask for clarification questions and just move on. And then from then on, the more serious ones obviously get posed in the council, where we can throw more tricky questions forward in a council where we meet 3 or 4 times a year. So that's the family part of the business, and I think a lot of that is consensus building. A lot of it is collaborative. So there's no just one guy standing up and saying this is what we should do, and that's the family part of the business. In the business, obviously, we have got the board of directors that would make decisions like that, or even the management committee that would do that decision. But those are more operation and more, I don't know, more strategic direction of the business as opposed to the family as a collective.
What are the key leadership skills that you need being in a family business?
I think it may not be the case for all family business, but in our case, a lot of our team members are long-serving. They've definitely been with us longer than the average employee in many other companies, because when we give out our long service awards, you see there's a big category of people receiving it 30 years, 40 years of service. So we're very lucky to have such loyal employees. So in our case, that loyalty means we have long-serving staff, we benefit from the experience, the skills they have. In return, we hope we're giving them some sense of security and some stability. So I think in terms of style or leadership style, we want everyone to feel that this is an extended family where you are taken care of, and that we're going to be here for generations to come, right? So that they may then bring in their next generation of family members into the company too. So it's giving that sense of family, and with that, it's always natural that you will want to have a bit more sense of consultation, giving people a sense of chance to contribute to the discussions, because this is them feeling a part of an extended family. They're not just here as a job, but they believe in the story of the brand as much as we do.
Okay, so I hear a very collaborative, consultative management style that has evolved in the next generations.
And also, I think the environment, right, that we're put in at anyone. So a case in point would be COVID. I think COVID was a tough time for the business, and really a real crucible a real testing ground for how can we navigate a very difficult external forces onto a company that is 138 years old. We had to make some very, very big decisions, and we were almost talking on a hourly basis at some points in time on what do we do with the staff, and we decided to keep all the staff together. They couldn't go to work. Some decided to leave and find their own jobs elsewhere, but a lot of them stayed and stuck together. And whatever decisions that we made together, whether it's through Zoom, which was such a favorite tool at that time, was critical, was dire, and had to be done very quickly. So we had no luxury of calling the board together or to call the family council together. We had to do everything very, very quickly. So it becomes more authoritative in a style as more of a collaborative style. COVID was, looking back, it was a good learning experience, but at that point in time it was very, very painful.
Yeah. I've learned a lot from your legacy, and I'm sure others learn from that as well. And thank you for being with us here today.
Thank you for coming.